Meeting my donor's family has been incredible because I've been able to thank them in person for giving me life, for giving me a new lease on life, for allowing me to see my sons go through grade school, to go through high school, through college. My sons are now working members of society, so I was able to thank them for that, for giving me life. When I was 18, 19 years old, I was diagnosed with a genetic liver disease called autoimmune liver disease. As time went on, the liver became worse, and I did finally get cirrhosis of the liver. Dr. Bach was the doctor that took care of me pre-transplant. She was the one that determined that I did need a transplant.
Like any other autoimmune disease, the body looks at something as foreign, so there was an attack or assault on her liver and ultimately led to liver failure and complications of liver disease, where if she didn't receive a new liver, she would have not made it.
I had my successful liver transplant here at Mount Sinai almost 21 years ago. The liver that I received from Geraldine in Dallas, Texas, my donor mother, was 76 years old when she passed of a cerebral hemorrhage. So if you add the numbers, 76-year-old liver, 20 years later, my liver is 96 years old, and I'm doing phenomenal. So if you think about it, in 4 years, my liver's going to be 100 years old.
The risk to benefit was that she wasn't going to get a liver because of the way the system worked and because there's a shortage of livers, and so a decision was made with her consent to use a liver that was a little older than the standard liver at a time that we didn't really know 100% that older livers were going to perform or make it all the years. You don't know when the next liver is going to come and what kind of liver it's going to be, and unfortunately it's a reality that not everybody gets a liver or makes it. So she made obviously a wise decision, but a difficult decision at the time, that this might not have been the perfect liver.
We have long been leaders in pushing these limits, mostly because our patients are in such need. And if we waited for the 20-year-old perfect donor, but the reality is that that represents less than 10% of the potential donor pool. So if we all waited for that, we would do a fraction of the transplants and many more people would die. So we've always been about pushing the limits. So originally we thought you can only use a liver from somebody who's under the age of 55. And then we pushed it and realized you could use a liver from somebody who is under the age of 65. And actually today, we can use livers even from people in their 80s and possibly in their 90s. At the time Denise was transplanted, using a 76-year-old liver was among the oldest ever used, and it was considered undoable. But reality is that the liver is a privileged organ. It can repair itself. Unlike any other organ, it can regenerate and regrow. And the liver doesn't age the same way as a kidney or a lung or any of our other organs.
Denise is a pretty special woman, and obviously an advocate for herself, but also an advocate for people in her situation. She's been my go-to person when I have a patient that I need to start talking and preparing for liver transplant, because she just has such a positive attitude. She's just a really good role model.
When I met my donor's daughter, Rebecca, she filled me in a lot about Geraldine, my donor, and it was uncanny because there were a couple of coincidences that we had, and that we both grew up the first decade of our lives in an orphanage or foster homes. A donor and the recipient both graduated from nursing school at an age of 52 years old. And it makes you think, like, gee, this must have been meant to be, or there's something, you know, the odds of that are incredible.
For many people, it's very therapeutic to meet the people whose lives were saved from their loved one's unfortunate event. For them, suffering through a tragedy, whatever it is, especially when it's unexpected or the donor is young, I think there's a lot of comfort in knowing that those organs saved somebody else's life.
It was probably one of the most incredible experiences in my whole life. Her mother gave me life, so we're like sisters. We consider ourselves like sisters, and whoever would have expected that?
A standard donor can potentially give up to 9 organs. So, and then can save potentially 50 other people with tissue and bone. So there's a lot of good that could come from one donor. The success of transplant in general has led to broadening of the indications for transplant. We've pushed the limits with age. We've pushed the limits with comorbidities. We can use livers from people with things like diabetes and hypertension. And more recently, we've pushed the limits even further. We actually can take livers from people who have been infected with certain viruses and offer them to people already infected with those viruses. And so we are constantly looking at ways to increase the pool of donors, utilize every organ that is available because our need is so great.